So, welcome back to the channel. Today, checking out the Martin Logan Motion Foundation. Every time I say Martin Logan Motion Foundation, all I think is, sounds like the name of a school for interpretive dance that was founded by a guy named Martin Logan. But anyways, Martin Logan Motion Foundation B2 bookshelf speakers. So the Martin Logan Motion Foundation is the absolute entry-level series of speakers from Martin Logan right now, being late 2024. And that's kind of different for Martin Logan because it used to be that they had their electrostats and then they had their box speakers. And their box speakers, there was just one series, and they had like a couple of bookshelves, a couple of floor standers, and I believe one center channel. And that was really it. They didn't have multiple lines. This generation, they actually have three separate, like individual lines that all have different drivers and different build quality. So they have the Martin Logan Motion XT series, the Motion series, and the Motion Foundation series. And that's what these are. So that's going to be the cheapest series from Martin Logan right now. But I have to say, for being an entry-level speaker, the build quality is surprisingly good. The veneer that they put on here is pretty decent. It is just a vinyl wrap. And it isn't like that 3D textured vinyl wrap, really. I mean, there's a little bit of texture to it, but almost nothing. But at least in this walnut finish, it looks really nice. Like, it looks very similar to the real walnut finish on my salamander stand here. And then I like the, I'm not usually a fan of gold, but when it's, you know, contrast, or not really contrasted because it's not a lot of contrast, but when it's, you know, alongside this walnut veneer, this gold trim ring that goes around the woofer fasteners, it works. Like, it actually looks pretty decent. Not a fan of these speakers in white because the waveguide here is white and it looks really weird to me. Some people might like the white and the black is too plain looking, but this walnut is a good looking speaker. And then it's got that nice black anodized aluminum 6.5-inch woofer. My one complaint about the build quality on these speakers is I'm not a fan of the material they use for this waveguide. I mean, listen to this. That is some hard, cheap plastic that they made that waveguide out of. And as you'll see in the measurements later, I think that causes a little bit of harshness in the treble that probably wouldn't be there if they could have used something like the rubber waveguide they put around the Klipsch speakers in this current generation of the reference Premier speakers. I feel like it would have absorbed some of the waves that are like diffracting off of this and caused a smoother high end, which would have been nice, but probably would have cost, you know, 50 cents more. And when you're building a budget speaker, every little bit of corner cutting counts. So that's probably what they thought they needed to do. I will happily report that with this speaker, they actually give you binding posts that are deep enough so when you put your banana plugs into the binding posts, they actually go in pretty much all the way. I think it's the first set of speakers that I'm reviewing that have nice deep banana plugs like that, or deep binding posts like that, which is kind of nice. So, and then also like just the cabinet itself is pretty dense. Like, it doesn't feel super hollow and ring really badly. It feels quite solid for a speaker that is considered an entry-level speaker from Martin Logan. So that's essentially my thoughts on the build quality and the looks of the speaker. Like, surprisingly good build quality and like pretty good looks for a budget, like entry-level speaker. So, how do they sound? You know, the main reason that people actually watch speaker reviews online. So it's kind of funny because when I first got them, I thought, oh no, oh God. I thought that they didn't sound good at all. They were incredibly harsh and sibilant on the top end. Listening to a song by Of Monsters and Men, the female vocalist in that group has a pretty high voice, and she sounded pretty shrill, and then every tss and t sound was just overpronounced and shouted at you, and I was getting listener fatigue like pretty quickly the first couple of days that I had these. But then after a couple of days, they seemed to settle down and they got a lot better. And the interesting thing is, I typically don't look at an owner's manual for a speaker until I've had it for probably about a week. And that's when I finally look at like their setup instructions, just because I want to see if what I do kind of lines up with what they say in the owner's manual. And with these particular speakers, pretty much what I did lined up exactly with what the manual said. Like, first of all, when I first got them and they sounded really bright and sibilant and shrill, and then listening to them for about a week, they settled down. I found out in the manual, it literally specifically says to allow 72 hours of continuous play for burn-in or break-in. And that's pretty much exactly, I'm sure after listening to them for about a week, I probably had 70-ish hours on them, and that was when they essentially broke in and started to sound a lot better. And then the other thing in the manual is talking about positioning. And the way that I usually position my speakers is I start off with them too close to the wall, and I keep pulling them out like inch and a half, and then eventually like a half inch at a time until they start to sound more balanced and the bass isn't too bloated and the mid-range isn't being like covered up by the bass. And what I found was, I think I had the rear of the speakers about 14 inches away from the front wall, which worked out to about 24 inches from the front baffle to the front wall. And in the little diagram in the owner's manual, it literally shows 24 inches from the front baffle to the front wall. And then also they say basically from the center line of the tweeter from here to the sidewall should also be about 24 inches. That is way off for me because I have a door over there. So like I can't put the speaker that far over, but the way that I had it set up was pretty much exactly how it showed in the manual, except for the distance from the sidewalls. And then also I had them towed in, like not quite pointed directly at me. Probably I would say if you could draw a straight line from the back of the speaker to the front of the speaker and extend that out, they were probably pointing like just to the outside of my shoulders, but they were mostly towed in. And that was what gave me the best sound from these speakers. So like that's about the suggested setup for the speakers. So enough beating around the bush. What do these speakers actually sound like? So starting off with the bass, you get really good punchy fast bass. This really well built cabinet and nice aluminum woofer lends itself to a really good fast punchy bass. Now comparing them to something like the ELACs that I reviewed last, I think the ELACs have a little bit more bass, play a little bit deeper, but these guys seem to be like faster and more precise bass. You get a little bit more texture and detail in the bass. And that's kind of a theme for the entire speaker. You get more texture and detail through the entire frequency response. Mid-range is really good and neutral and smooth. And the treble, there is a little bit of a rise. I'm gonna put up the graph right now so you could see. I did 2 measurements. Well, I did way more than 2 measurements, but I did 2 that I actually kept. There's the near field measurement, and you can actually see there's a pretty big bump at starting at around 2,800 hertz and going, a little bit past 3,000 hertz. And I have a very strong feeling that's a result of that hard plastic material that they used for the waveguide on the speaker. If they would have used something a little bit softer there that wasn't so harsh of a material, it probably would have absorbed some of those high frequency sounds that are diffracting off of the waveguide. But as you see in this measurement, it's almost gone when you're actually in the listening position. So this graph is showing you what I actually hear, because basically this is me playing the speakers in stereo with the microphone set up in my exact listening position at my exact ear height. So when you're actually listening to them in a real listening scenario, that 3,000 hertz, like big rise in the treble response it's still there, like you can still see it, but it's not as big of a deal, and it doesn't come across as, shouty or obnoxious in that like upper, or I should say, I guess lower treble region, that 3,000 hertz region. It's not a problem like I initially thought it would be, but I have a feeling, I kind of wish I would have measured them before the speakers were fully broken in, because that was probably bigger before, and that's probably what I was hearing that was like irritating me when I first started listening to the speakers. And then the rest of the frequency response is pretty good, like pretty flat. I'm gonna put up a graph of the ELAC measurements, and that's gonna be a little tangent I have to go on. When I put out the review of the ELACs, somebody was commenting that my measurements were terrible because there's no smoothness there. And it's funny to me that he used the word smoothness, because I'm guessing that this person isn't aware that when you do speaker measurements, you actually have to use a smoothing algorithm that's built into REW, because if you don't, then you get graphs that just look like this. It looks like nonsense. It looks like a seismograph during a 8.0 earthquake. Like there is no smoothness, and so you have to use a smoothing scheme or a smoothing algorithm built into REW. And when I did my first video actually showing measurements, I was only doing 1/12 smoothing, which is not as much smoothing as what most of the other YouTubers use. I kind of was thinking, hey, maybe if I use this less aggressive smoothing scheme, then you'll just see more detail in the measurements, which is technically true, but it just basically looks too jagged and crazy. So I'm now using 1/6, which is, I'm pretty sure, what basically everybody else uses in this field of YouTube speaker reviews. So that's what I'm gonna do going forward as well, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I guess. But yeah, if you look at the ELAC measurements versus the Martin Logan measurements here, both speakers are showing a big bump right at 40 hertz and then a null at around 80 to 100. That's my room. The only thing I could do about that is try to add some more room acoustics. That's something I'm going to be trying to get and add later. But after the stuff that's dominated by the room, the mid-range on both the ELACs and the Martin Logans is pretty equal, but the ELACs have a little bit lower treble response, like starting just over 1,000 hertz, and the Martin Logans are pretty much right on the 75 decibel reference volume is where I had these set when I was doing the measuring for both the ELACs and the Martin Logans. And Martin Logan's treble response is closer to that 75 hertz trend line like they should be. The ELACs, it's just a little bit lower. It's not like it's all over the place, it just drops down a little bit. So that results in that speaker having that little bit more laid back and less detail focused sound, whereas these have a more forward and more detail oriented sound. But that also results in them having what I think that is what results in them having a lot better imaging. So these speakers, they have a really good like three-dimensional sound stage. It's like most songs, if it's actually like in the recording, you're gonna hear the positioning of the singer and the guitarist and the drummer behind them and all that. Like you're gonna hear that a lot better than you can with the ELACs. So the ELACs cast this really big, wide, diffuse sound stage, but nothing is precisely placed in that sound stage. So overall, I mean, it's funny because in my last video, when I was doing the video about the ELACs, I said that these Martin Logans had a lot of heavy lifting to do to beat what I was hearing from those ELACs. But I actually think, surprisingly, that they did it. They are a better speaker, in my opinion. If you prefer that more laid back sound of the ELACs, then you'll probably like those better. But these guys are just, you know, noticeably more precise in their imaging and better detail up top. Bass is kind of a trade-off because, like I said, I think the ELACs have a little bit more bass, but it's a little bit sloppier. These, it's a little bit probably less bass, but then a little bit punchier and faster bass. And then mids, very similar to each other. And then the highs are a lot more detail focused with the Martin Logans. And then, yeah, so the looks also, I would say, are a win for the Martin Logans because these are a much prettier speaker, honestly, and they're available in black, white, and this walnut finish, whereas the ELACs are only available in one color. So, do I think that these speakers are worth their asking price? At $800, they are the most expensive speakers that I've tested so far on this channel. Not by a lot. I mean, you know, the Klipsch RP600Ms MSRP being $650, and then the JBL Studio 630s being $700. So these are at $800. They're not like that big of a difference. So if you're in that kind of price range, 100% buy these over the Klipsch's or the JBLs. If you're in that $400 to $500 price range and you can't stretch your budget up to $800 to pick up these, then go with the ELACs and you'll be perfectly happy with those because those are great speakers. Are these better? Yes. Are they better looking? That's obviously subjective. I think so. Yes, but these guys, I'm surprised to say that I would say just if you are looking in this price range, they are a good buy. I don't have any affiliate links or anything like that yet. Obviously, I'm too small of a channel, so I'm not like saying that to, you know, get people to start funneling money to me because I'm too small of a YouTube channel to get. I'm not making, basically this YouTube channel is only costing me money right now. So it's just an honest 100% recommendation. These things sound really good. I would love to hear what the towers sound like because having the same tweeter and mid-range driver, but then 3 6.5-inch woofers down below in a tower, these things probably in the tower form punch at a much higher class. Like I would love to get these, like the tower version of these, and compare them to my reference Canton Vento 896.2 tower speakers because they probably sound phenomenal. Yeah, so you could build out a whole home theater system with these Martin Logans and not spend a crazy amount of money. Or if you're just looking for 2-channel stereo, they perform great for that too. So like and subscribe to the channel and leave in the comments what you think I should do next. I've had a couple of commenters that are requesting, one guy requesting that I review the Emotiva B2 bookshelf speakers next. I've checked a few times, and every time I look at the Emotiva website, it says that they're currently unavailable. and nobody else seems to sell them. So I guess I can't really look at those until, you know, that changes. And then there's another commenter who has asked a couple of times if I could look at the Cerwin Vega LA 165s is what they're called. To be completely honest, I didn't even know Cerwin Vega was still around. And when I saw that comment, I was just like, wait, what? And went and looked at their page, and they still have like these giant, they look like PA speakers, but instead of having like carpet or the spray on like rubberized finish, they actually have like a wood grain vinyl, because they literally look like they made some of their giant PA towers but made them for the home. Those are hilarious. God, I would love to hear that. I know they probably don't sound that amazing, but they look ridiculous. Like, just, I have wanted to check those out since I was a teenager. I'm not going to buy those speakers and haul them into my tiny little apartment here to test them, but I am a little bit curious about those LA 165s, which would be another bookshelf speaker with a 6.5-inch woofer. So, but at a much lower price than every other speaker that I've checked out so far. They're $269 for a pair. So should I look at those next? You guys tell me. Or should I give my wallet a rest for like a week or two and review something that I have owned for a while? Like, I've had these Canton Vento 896.2 tower speakers for actually over 4 years now. I got those in 2020, like early summer in 2020. Should I tell you guys about how phenomenal those speakers are? I mean, the only thing that's kind of holding me back from doing that is I feel like I would have nothing but good things to say. Yeah, just let me know in the comments, and we'll see you next week.